I have a friend in the audience that helped me with that project. The date picker for e-bookers at that time had been designed, I believe, by an American, and it showed a 1-month calendar with a little arrow to go to the next month. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense because people book cars about a week or two in advance, sometimes even just the day of, right? But then when I spoke with the product manager for the United Kingdom, I discovered that actually in Europe, people book cars on average 56 days in advance. And the 1-month calendar would be a hassle because then you'd go and you'd have to click forward before you could actually get to the date that you wanted to book. And in doing my research, I discovered that a number of European sites already had 3-month calendars for car booking, like Sixt, which had an elegant one. Another dialectic in the way that cultures view time is whether they see it sequentially or synchronously. The picture on the left I shot when I was working in Chicago of one of the tall office buildings downtown. I call them filing cabinets for people. This is a culture where everything is viewed sequentially and divided up into discrete units, including space and time. And we use our Outlook calendars, and we've got the whole day relentlessly ticking off second by second, hour by hour, so we can schedule things. And if we break an appointment with someone, it's really a big deal because time is money. Time is a commodity. Time is an important and limited resource. However, and these terms, by the way, are from research from a cultural consultant named Fons Trompenaars, if you want to go learn more about this. In a synchronous culture, however, and that's a picture on the right from my trip to Jamaica, time is a lot more flexible. If you make an appointment with someone, it's more like a kind of a wish or a desired outcome based on where we are right now. So let's have dinner tonight. But that's how we feel because we're feeling really close right now. But then later I'm going to go to another session and feel really close with someone else, and I won't remember you. And that'll be okay with you too, because you'll be in another session, and then we'll have dinner with other people, and it'll all be great. And that's just a different approach to time, equally as valid. If you're designing for a sequential culture, you definitely want to have a navigation that's very linear and that's logical and that makes sense and that people can get through efficiently. If you're designing for a synchronous culture, maybe you want to have more browse and search and methods for people to communicate with one another, and the linear aspects maybe don't matter as much, or maybe you can interpret it some other way. Sometimes for me, it's just fun to think about designing software for cultures that view time completely differently from anything that we're normally used to. And I've done a lot of study into Mayan culture, married a Mayan at one point in my life, so I got pretty deeply into it. And also Hopi culture is kind of interesting. These are cultures that don't really have even words like the abstract word we have, time. They don't even have a word like that. In the Hopi culture, everything is either in one bucket called the unmanifest, hopes, dreams, visions, thoughts, ideas, and then everything is in the other bucket called the manifest. In other words, what I can feel right now. In the Mayan culture, these are two examples of calendars, different people's interpretations of Mayan calendars. They have two basic calendars, a 260-day calendar and then a more of a solar calendar, and they interact with one another. And each day has its own personality. Each day is creative. In essence, each day is a quirky god. Another interesting aspect of Mayan views, traditional Mayan views of time, is that time is cumulative. It just stacks up. It doesn't go like this. everything overlaps. And as we go further in time, it becomes denser and richer and more complex, and there's more interlocking pieces. And so a person who knows the calendars and the days does take a very shamanic role in divination and understanding all those complexities. Oh, I just don't want to get sidetracked because I could talk about that for a while. Also, no discussion of time, I think, would be complete without a mention of Terence McKenna's habit novelty dimensions. He believed that all of time and space are an interplay between conservative forces that he called habit and forces of creativity and novelty. And that, novelty and habit kind of trend up or down. He's believing that we're reaching a point of increasing novelty to the point where next year, December 21st, 2012, novelty will achieve infinity and something's going to happen. Some people think time will end. And also along these lines, if you Google on the web Schumann resonance, SCHUMAN, you'll find people who believe very strongly that the internal resonance of the Earth is changing such that time is speeding up, I think, so that what we now think is really a 24-hour day is actually just a 16-hour day. And again, it's going to speed up so much that sometime next year time is going to stop, whatever that means. So see you next year. Or not. Yeah. So if you're designing for people of a specific culture, you can ask, what's the shape of time for this culture? Is it an arrow, or are they cyclical? Are they synchronous, sequential, or whatever? You can ask yourselves these kinds of questions. And, do they have any culturally specific views of time? Also, if you're designing for a global audience, you can ask yourself the question, should I just use my own Western approach, and forget about trying to adapt to them and let's just be missionaries? Or you can, look, how can I make this design work for people of all cultures? Is it even possible? I think typically we tend to be missionaries and just force everyone to our standard. Think about what kind of internal picture of time you make when you get into a plane and you can travel just about anywhere in the world in about 36 hours or less, crossing any one of our 24 time zones, not to mention daylight savings time, which starts very early tomorrow morning. I know some of you are in that same boat right now, having flown here from other countries. Here's a picture of myself coming back from my trip to Jamaica at the end of an 18-hour day of traveling. When my husband took this shot of me, I was no longer in any earthly time zone. I was in my own body time, which was my own biology's response to the shifting temporal landscape of travel. And, I think you probably all had that experience of arriving at whatever local time was breakfast time, and your body was saying, it's bedtime. I want to know, is there somebody in this audience who can design a tool that will help us make sense of this kind of experience? To integrate our personal bodily felt sense of time with clock time. TripIt doesn't do that for me. And of course, here we are all in this room at the same time, theoretically, or more or less. But at the same time, probably I would guess some of you at least are connecting with other people through texting or emails. Hope you're not on the phone. Maybe Skyping or whatever. But and those people that you're connecting with, they're probably in different time zones, or they often could be. And yet the two of you are connecting at the same moment, which is now, which I call the now zone. But we don't really have any clock system or calendrical system or timekeeping system that helps us make sense of that. And so we're always saying, is that your time or my time? And I'm making an appointment to talk to my son later today, and I'm like, I'll call you at 4 o'clock. And he's like, yeah, okay. Well, 4 o'clock Seattle time, Chicago time where we lived a month ago, or New York time where his girlfriend lives, We need some kind of new system, and I would challenge any of you who are so inclined to devise that. We used to live local. So local clocks were good enough, but we don't live local anymore, we live global. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about something I call finding the path beyond technology. In my lifetime, I've gone from using as a phone the wooden box on the wall that you see on the left, which I used, as a kid. There was a little handle you would crank, and you'd pick up the thing and put it up to your ear and talk into the mouth pad. And there was a little shelf at the front where you could put your notepad and your pencil, right? And then now, of course, I use this little powerhouse computer that's way more than a phone. And in 5 years, God knows what I'm going to be using. Am I going to be speaking on my diamond stud earrings? What kind of input-output devices are we going to use? Something real small, I'm going to guess. When I used to watch TV in the 60s, I would look it up on the newspaper, and there would be this sequential grid of shows that I could watch at specific times. Now I use Amazon Prime, instant videos, which I just got, and I go on YouTube, and I use Vimeo, and so forth. I go to ABC's website, and I can just watch whatever show pretty much I want to watch at any time that I want to watch it. And so these have been now released from time. All our devices are miniaturizing, and we're getting into real time. I think maybe when you think of real time, you might think about Google Instant Search or texting. But here's an example I heard about a couple days ago that kind of illustrates the value of real time more to me in a more practical way. When a farmer used to need to buy or sell newborn piglets, they would have to drive to town and go look at the bulletin board on the farmer's co-op, or call around, or ask at church, or whatever. And getting a piglet right at the time when they are just born, and then transporting them at the optimal time, would be a challenge. Now, if you want to get a newborn piglet, you just go on Craigslist. You can see the photos and get all the details and call somebody up and transact. As real-time interactions become the norm for almost everything, we'll be able to keep track of the health of people, environments, economies, and respond in really timely ways when things happen like Katrina or like the earthquake in Japan yesterday. We'll be able to act more appropriately and quickly when we have these feedback loops in place, like the physicist Fritz Capra says in this quote, will become a self-regulating, self-organizing community around the world with appropriate feedback loops, or what Teilhard de Chardin talks about as the thinking envelope around the earth. Now, it still falls to us to be people of goodwill and to use these systems appropriately. but we'll have the mechanisms in place